Good evening, everybody, and welcome to We the People. Tonight, We the People meet Andy Caffrey. He's running in California's 2nd Congressional District, which is actually kind of a cool congressional district as far as I'm concerned. Includes some areas of California where I know they grow some stuff that I like. I think Jilly Love, if you're out there in the audience tonight, or will be at some point, I think she's down in that area. And if I were going to move somewhere in California, that's where I'd go, I think. If I had no choice to go to California.
Areas of California where I know.
Hold on, Andy, turn off the YouTube.
Yeah.
We're in the audience tonight.
Hang on a second. Can't be watching the YouTube and doing this at the same time.
We're going to move somewhere in California. That's where I go, I think.
Trying to hide it.
No choice.
Hang on, everybody.
Just
Technical issues. All right, everybody. Just a slight technical issue. No big deal. This is Andy Caffrey. And I was talking about Humboldt. Thank you, Andy, for joining us on We the People.
My pleasure, John.
Yeah. We'll get you squared up in a second. Andy's got that nice mic there. Used to work in radio, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Earth First Radio.
That's and
25
Earth.
years old.
Go ahead.
It's about 25 years old. No, 35 years old. Oh, my God.
It's a good mic, then. That's a good mic.
It is.
So, sorry about that. So, why run? I was looking at the district. I mean, it's huge. It's a ridiculously huge district. We're going to talk about why run. I totally forgot to bring in Laura Livengood. I have biffed this whole intro already. Laura, come on in. Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
The nice thing about this is that Andy's got great audio and video, so we'll be able to cut out segments, which means all of this bullshit at the beginning is going to be gone.
Yeah,
So,
I'll get him centered.
hey, Laura, tell her I
Hi.
can't. He's a little. He's a little left. Imagine that.
Left of center. Well, that's okay.
Not just a little.
Oh, we'll talk about your. We know what you are. We'll talk about that. The Green Party infiltration of the Democratic Party. We'll talk about that. Laura, please tell everybody how to engage.
Well, as you all know, this is an engagement broadcast, and that means you get to ask questions of our guest live during the show. So if you have a question for him, please write the word question all in caps or tag me so I can see it easily, and we will ask those questions at appropriate times. I'll also drop a link to Andy's website into chat so that you can check it out yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura.
You're welcome.
Andy, I can't make you any more farther right, so you're going to have to scoot over if you want to be in the center camera, my friend.
To the left?
Well, you can see yourself. That works great. And we got the sun going down there in California. So let's talk about, look, your district appears to me to have a blue Democrat in there. They've written some environmental stuff from what I've seen. At least they posted it on their website. I looked there. Takes some money from some people. What's your problem? Why replace that? Why rock the boat as a Democrat? And you told me in the green room that you're actually infiltrating the party as a green. So what's going on here?
Right. I'm a green in Democrats' clothing.
That's okay with me.
I helped found 2 green parties, and I've been involved in this independent, environmentally grounded electoral politics since 1980. So
Wow.
this is something that I've felt is a domain we should operate in as organizers. And it's just gotten to the point where, I mean, okay, sure, Jared, who is my opponent, I think is a really nice guy. We get along great. I've never said anything bad about him as a person. But what have those 6 years gotten us? When we first ran in 2012, there were 3 studies that came out that I brought into the campaign that said we had 5 years to redirect the society away from global warming before it really becomes too late. And now those years have passed and nothing happened. Well, as a direct action organizer, I'm willing to be a lot more bold and confrontational than the typical liberal Pelosi Democrat. And so the problem is really, can his reform methods get the job done? Or do we have to be revolutionaries? And I think we have to be revolutionaries. And that's the difference. It's not views. I think views are wonderful, but you know, words without action don't accomplish anything.
But that's what resistance is all about, Andy. Just kind of not
well,
really...
resistance stops things. It doesn't make new things happen. And we do not have a shared collective vision about what kind of post-fossil fuel society we want. We don't know how fast we have to get off fossil fuels. We haven't really pulled in the major issues like habitat destruction, the destruction of our ocean fisheries. There's all kinds of things that we just ignore because we live in this MSNBC reality, and they get us focused on a handful of issues that are important, the issues regarding prejudice against Muslims, the border issues, police violence against people in Black communities. These are all really important, but if you live in this little MSNBC bubble, you can ignore the things that are really threatening civilization. And the fact that our ice sheets are collapsing and are going to give us 20 feet or more of sea level rise this century, and no one is talking about it, scares the shit out of me. At the very least, as a candidate, I can provoke people to take it on.
Agreed. And let's just talk about climate change, because I'm right there with you. I can't stand that we. I mean, I know it's what scientists do, and they got to be cautious and everything. But you know, I think you and I both know, because you've been talking about this a long time. I was looking at your website. You've been talking about climate for 20 plus years, probably longer than that. And the numbers that they use are the moderate numbers, conservative numbers. They're not using any other data tables. And I think to talk about 100 years, most Americans, they're like, whatever, it's not affecting me right now. Do you get that sense from constituents in your district?
That they're concerned?
That they are concerned, or that they're like, hey, it's not affecting me personally at the moment. Why do I care?
I haven't had one person say that.
Nice.
They all respect what I'm saying. Well, I work on community radio here in Humboldt County, KMUD. And I get to do music shows and talk shows. And I've done a number on climate. The series is called Crisis in the Cryosphere. And if you go to my website, andycaffrey.org, you can see 2 of those radio shows.
Nice.
So people associate a lot of these issues with me. And I've been an Earth First organizer here since 1988. So people have heard me talk for sustainable logging. They know I'm on the side of the loggers. I do overnight shelters in the wintertime to keep homeless veterans and other people from dying. And so they take seriously my concerns. And I understand what you're saying, and it's not about the 100 years. It's about recognizing that there are thresholds in nature that if we cross them, they have incredibly dire consequences. And for me, I found out about global warming in 1980 from Roger Revelle, my chemistry professor, the same teacher that Al Gore talks about.
Wow.
And Roger Revelle was the first guy to start measuring atmospheric CO2 in 1957, the year I was born. And he was talking about these gases that were going to warm civilization, warm the whole planet. And the source was the foundational energy of our society. And I went, holy crap, how bad is it? How much time do we have? How much do we have to change? But apparently, not many other people have asked those questions. And when you do that, there are scientific ways that you can learn some really important things that should be part of our political discussion. I'll give you one example. When I was in high school, I took a special program on tide pool marine biology. And we'd go out to the tide pools, and every hour we'd measure the temperature, the salinity, and the pH. And then we'd wade out into the ocean and do the same thing. And what you find is that as the sun passes overhead, as the tide goes out, these little tide pools become isolated. And the heat causes the water to evaporate. So the salinity changes and the temperature changes. Out in the ocean, though, the sun comes down and you have the whole global ocean absorbing that heat. So what's happened is the creatures that live in the ocean didn't evolve the tolerances that the creatures in the tide pools did evolve. So you put one of these open ocean creatures in the tide pool, and just those little bits of change in the course of a normal day can kill them. So we've got to think about all of our ecosystems in terms of what are the limitations ecologically. And in the forests around here, just because of the temperature change we've had now in the winter, the pests, the pine bark beetles, don't get frozen to death.
Right.
And we're having huge epidemics. That's just with a moderate change right now. So the things I'm talking about regarding collapsing ice sheets, they're collapsing now.
Right.
And we have to look at that. And I have some particular conclusions that I enter into the conversation, but I really want society to start looking at it. For example, nuclear power plants. If you look up how we decommission our nuclear power plants, you find that the method we use in the US takes 60 years. But the latest studies about sea level rise say we're going to get up to the 5 feet where those coastal nukes are situated about 30 years from now.
Right.
Well, if you just do math, that means we have to start shutting them down now. It means we have to figure out how to double the speed of decommissioning. And we have to finally figure out where the hell are we going to put this nuclear waste.
All right.
So these things are just not being talked about, and people do care when I lay it out.
I get that. But honestly, if I were going to look at the whole climate crisis right now and prioritize, decommissioning of nuclear power plants I can't even bring that to the table because we can't even get politicians to agree that we need to do something. I mean, don't you agree that right now the main blockade is the fact that our Congress doesn't want to do anything about climate change? If they did, they would have. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. But having become a candidate, I've had to think of myself as, how do I become a responsible congressman? And when you think about national security issues, you don't just say, oh, I'm going to ignore the science of our greatest national security threat. You actually look into it. And if you don't agree that the situation's dire, that there's any urgency to what we have to do, you base that on your assessment of the science. But they don't do that.
Right.
And I learned it in 1980, and now it's been 38 years. And so the consequence of these climate denialists is that they've guaranteed that 132 nations are going to lose all of their coastline this century, probably within the next few decades.
Right.
And so it means they're traitors, and it means we have to get them out now, which is why I'm so into an electoral revolution where we oust plutocratic, fossil fuel supported candidates entirely. We don't try to get them to do anything. And I'm also challenging people to say, okay, well, what kind of society do we want to make? And when you get to that point, then you bring the whole climate vision into the picture and you figure, okay, how do we slow down this process? I'd like to have a couple of 100 years before we have to worry about those nukes, but that means we have to get off fossil fuels really fast, and no one is talking about that. They're talking about getting off it in 30 or 40 years, and that's not soon enough.
No, we know that. It's not. So, okay, and I'm just going to jump to a question that's been boggling my mind for a while. Knowing what you know, knowing that your constituents are with you there, and I've talked to a lot of California reps, and unless they're in a really seriously deep red area, and even there it's changing, for the most part, people are seriously concerned about climate change in California. How then is Jerry Brown still popular while he fracks the crap out of your state and continues to nuzzle with fossil fuel industry? That's the first question. You don't have to really know the answer. But the second question is, how do we change that conversation? How do we get even sitting politicians to talk about the better aspects of climate change, which is there's profit there, and they've got to like that, right?
Well, I just don't think we should put any hope in getting any of these people to do what needs to be done. I mean, there aren't a lot of people like Jared, and even Jared, in 2012, I had a little conversation with him in the men's room, and I said, Jared, when you hear me talk about these collapsing ice sheets and stuff, and you've got kids, aren't you concerned about it? And he said, yeah, he definitely was. And I said, well, so what do you want to do about it? And he said he wanted to pursue an incrementalist approach.
Right.
And the problem is, when we talk about electoral politics, everyone hates it. Everyone thinks it's completely corrupt. And so very few activists, progressive activists until last year with the Bernie movement, got into trying to come up with strategies where we could accomplish what we need to accomplish. And the thing that's really sad is everyone just says, man, they all suck. Here in the North Coast, we had a lot of Democrats, and they were totally in bed with the forest industry. They were helping with the Contra wars down in Central America. But, you know, okay, so maybe they're in favor of the ERA. Great. That's wonderful. And so what happens is people live in this world of political reality. And that's why you had these Hillary people who so adamantly held on to Hillary, despite the fact that she's a mass murderer who has no remorse for all the people killed in Iraq because of her vote. She laughs about wiping out people in Libya and destroying that country. You know, these are the best that's being offered. Well, everyone freaks out and says, well, that's better than like a Trump, you know, or any of the 17 Republicans that were offered. And I've been studying these guys and studied the psychopathy checklist. And what you find is all 17 of those Republicans and Hillary meet the diagnosis for a psychopath. And that means they have no conscience. So if you're trying to apply to their sense of moral values, you've got a failed strategy. What you need to do is get real people in there who have a history of working with their communities, who put themselves out there. They haven't made a lot of money, but when somebody's in trouble, they're the ones who show up. You know, sometimes just the wonderful church ladies, I call them in our community, who go out and give sandwiches to the homeless people that are being picked on by the business owners. Those are the kind of people we need. You know, they don't have to be lawyers. My God. You know, you've got like access to the best science in the world if you're a congressperson. You don't have, there's no excuse. You know, I mean, if you don't take seriously understanding the science, when those guys kept saying, oh, well, I'm not a scientist. Well, you then bring in the best scientists. You need to understand this. You know, it's like in World War II, if people say, oh, we don't forget about Hitler, you know, Ford, he's a buddy of his. Don't worry about fascism. Let's just deal with World War II without paying attention to fascism. Well, that just doesn't make sense. And the problem is people are not used to thinking about science in terms of national security. They aren't used to thinking of it except like saving a wilderness area, you know, or stopping pollution in some place or shutting down a nuclear power plant. And so there is this whole new way we have to think about things. And that's my challenge. I'm introducing it. You know, and I'm ahead of people in terms of really looking into the interaction between our whole civilization and the biosphere. And that's not been a part of what the Democrats or Republicans have put out there. And so people feel like they just want to go with the best of what's in that political world. And I'm saying you got to look at the real world and ask, what do we need to accomplish politically?
Absolutely. So you're in favor of a lot more science-based, evidence-based, fact-based decision-making in government.
Yeah, I have no ideology, even though I think it's okay for you to call me a green because that's where my politics are. I'm just a guy who's organizing, who's trying to solve problems.
Well, I'm
not trying to change your life at all, but things are getting bad.
Well, they are, and I'm with you there. And I don't like, people are talking about, well, it's going to be really bad in 10 years. I'm like, did you see what happened last year? I mean, why are we talking about 10 years? Did you see what happened to Houston last year? Did you see what happened to Puerto Rico? Did anybody remember the last couple of years of extreme weather and you're like talking about what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Come on. Really? Fire season in California is just about year round, right?
Well, and then we had these 3 horrible fires in my district and the adjacent one, you know, last fall.
Right.
In Napa, Santa Rosa, and Mendocino counties.
Your district's huge, by the way.
It's
ridiculous. Everybody see this? This is insane. I don't know, but we created this technology to help you communicate with your constituents, by the way, Juwayne. But look at that, everybody. We're talking all the way from the top, the Oregon border, down to, what is it, right into Marin?
Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah, and half of the voters are in that little tiny bit down at the bottom in Marin County.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting difference. It used to be that Marin was not in this district. It was California 1. And we had Napa County and part of actually Yolo County where UC Davis is. They gave us just UC Davis, which is pretty cool. But then they changed it with the census, and in 2012, Marin County was added to these other districts that are all rural. So the median income in Marin County is $85,000 a year. In all the rest of that district, it's $35,000. So we're completely different. And of course, that gives Huffman this tremendous advantage. And in 2012, when he first ran, there were only 3 of us who were not from Marin, out of 12, 3 that were not from Marin or Sonoma counties.
Wow.
So it's crazy. So I actually need a lot of Bernie people to make their little contribution of $27, so I have gas money to go over that whole district, because it is big. It's like over 400 feet long, 400 miles long.
Yeah, yeah. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. And yeah, you need to get the burners. Where are you guys, burners in CD2? Huh?
Yeah.
Coming out. You should be all over the place. I mean, granted, you're growing weed and hanging out in the forest, but whatever, you should be there. I'd be there with you, you know?
Well, it's an amazing district, because down there in Marin, you have the Bioneers. So you have a lot of these, alternative science people going back to the Whole Earth catalog. Stuart Brand, he was there, and the Grateful Dead.
Well,
we have pot growers, and we Earth First tree climbers. And we've always had a very strong Green Party presence at the sort of county and city level.
Right.
So it is a really great district. We have no military to speak of.
Oh,
and
nice.
There's no real big corporate presence here either. Marin added a little bit of that when that was added to our district. But so we actually, and the pot growers, it's a really fascinating community, because most of them came out as the Back to the Land movement. And so they were really looking at how do we live in a responsible, ecologically sound way.
Nice.
And that's been part of our culture for decades now.
Nice.
40 years.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of vision, and these pioneers, I think they're great, but they don't really get what it's like to live in an area where it's very, full of rural poor who get by on 35 grand a year.
Right. Well, exactly. And in a farming area that I'm guessing has much different environmental needs and crises, right? You've got wells being
dug.
dug.
The thing too, that's a big issue in our district is ecological pot growing. And what's happened is a lot of the kids of these Back to Land movement people have gotten into indoor grows. And of course, that involves a lot of fossil fuel burning. And because it's been illegal, people did it as well to keep the airplanes and now the drones from flying over and finding their grows. Of course, if you go to Google Maps and you look up Garberville, look up Redway, and the area around it, you will just, it
Field
seems
after
like
field. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oregon's, yeah.
Well, it's not the fields. You'll see the fields, but it's mostly these huge greenhouses.
Yeah.
So,
Oregon's the same way.
We need to change that, and taking it out of the closet, and making marijuana something that's normalized as just part of what some humans do, and the economy that produces it is fine. It's safe. You can walk down the streets. That's what we have to do. So we can start to talk about shutting down the really bad grows, and then we have a lot of people who go into the national forests, and that makes it a national issue. Every citizen, owns the national forest, and there's some people from Mexico and Bulgaria and Russia all over the place who are coming and just wiping it out. And we've got endangered species like the prairie martin, and they're poisoning them with these horrible rodenticides.
Right. Well, that's a whole nother issue, the fighting of GMOs. I want to show everybody that you guys know the area that Annie's in. These are the opponents. So Jared Huffman is the incumbent Democrat, and Dale Mensing is the Republican challenger. And I just want to say, of the three of you, you're the only one who looks like you should actually be representing the district.
I agree. I agree entirely.
It doesn't even look like Jared smokes the pot or would try it if he were given an opportunity. He takes money from wine industry anyway. So.
Well, he did do a gig with Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead.
Really?
That was, yeah. Well, I was the first guy to sing, the first candidate to sing. I sang a song called "Where Are We Going to Work When the Trees Are Gone," and another one called "Teenage Immigrant Welfare Mothers on Drugs." So Mickey Hart was doing a benefit for him back in 2012, and so Jared whipped out his guitar, and it was some corny.
Oh, Jared plays too. Okay. So
yeah,
so we have competing environmental, because Jared does some environmental stuff too, but apparently you say he calls you the green candidate, and I did say that in a quote. But he plays guitar and competes with you in that sense as well, because you're also a musician, correct?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be whipping up a whole musical using my iPad synthesizer apps. And after the 2012 congressional campaign, when I lost, I asked myself, what would be the most fun thing I could do? And the answer was learn to sing all the Doors songs. So I've been working on that too. So
nice.
A bunch of ecological poetry, John Trudell poetry,
great.
whale ship sinking poetry, some Doors songs, and some other things.
It's very Bernie.
It's very
Bernie.
Well,
were you a Bernie supporter?
Going, man. Got to have fun too.
Sure. Were you a Bernie supporter in 2016?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've been writing to him for a long time, and I told him about my electoral revolution and said he needed to call for it. And then, wow, he became this. I was a Democratic presidential candidate, the first to announce in 2016. Although I didn't really run a campaign to win, I just sort of became a candidate so I could talk as a Democratic presidential candidate, calling out Senator James Inhofe as America's #1 traitor, changed the framing there. And so I have been calling for an electoral revolution to oust plutocrats. And that is the foundation. The idea was that if I could figure out a way to get elected here using YouTube videos, other kinds of social networking, community organizing with all of the groups, the Native American groups around here, other activist groups, that then other people who are even more famous activists like a Jim Hightower or Aaron Brockovich or Winona LaDuke, that those people could get elected. I'd like to see Michael Moore, Amy Goodman. Those would all be great people. And there's a lot more now that aren't famous, but then they could get into. Because the question is, what does that $1.2 or $1.4 million that you're supposed to have to run for Congress buy you? Mostly, it buys you TV time. And up here, our TV stations, for $5, you can have your 30-second spot aired, and it goes out to every TV in Humboldt and Del Norte counties on CBS or Fox TV.
Really?
So I actually made 4 TV commercials in 2012, and one of them where I smoked a joint at the end, and when it says, "Hi, I'm Andy Caffrey, and I approve of this message," I had the sound of a gurgling bong behind me.
Nice.
So
Nice.
there are different ways of doing this, and that's
Sure.
the whole point. The point is that I'm going to get in, and I'm going to be some great congressman. Believe me, I'm just an organizer, and I want to help us get a team of people, because we have to oust these people who, how can you say for 38 years that there's no global warming and get away with it?
Well, now, we could talk about that because you and I both know the answer there. But before we do, I would like to see from Laura Livegood if we have any questions coming out of the audience. Anybody there?
We do not have any questions yet, but everybody is really enjoying, especially I give a special shout out to Julie Love because she's in your district. She's one of our very regular viewers and has been very excited to have you here. The question is coming up. Are you running technically as a Democrat? Are you running as green? Are you an ecotopian green?
Ecotopian Democrat. Yeah. Well,
are you officially on the? Are you on the Democratic?
He's on the Democratic ballot. Officially.
I'm a registered Democratic candidate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
But I'm not a supporter of the Democratic establishment or the party. I won't take any jobs with them. I've never asked anybody to register as a Democrat. I'm a big supporter of independent third-party politics. I helped start 2 Green parties. But what happened was, when I started to realize, well, actually, this is kind of interesting. Back in 2006, when the Democrats won control of the House and Senate, there were 15 or 17 seats that were won by 5,000 votes or fewer.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, well, thank the bloggers for that. The bloggers got you, Daily Kos and all those people got you those 5,000 votes or more. So what if we started to think about the ones we lost by 5,000 votes or less? And year after year, not just at election time, started to work to get people to support, less centrist, more left candidates within the primaries, and then of course the Democrat against the Republican in the general election. Maybe we could start to get rid of these horrible corporatists, and because it's so disturbing when people like there was one of the papers around here who wrote one sentence about me and then they endorsed Jared. And they said something like, well, when the blue wave is coming, we want to have Jared there, but they didn't do anything. And you're still going to have Trump or Pence as a Republican president. So they still haven't expressed any kind of strategy for getting anything done. So I still think it's bankrupt. But anyway, so that's where I got this idea of trying to support community leaders as candidates. And then I looked at our district, and this is 2010 now, or 28, I guess it was. And I found that in our district, which is 3/4 Democrats, you win the Democratic primary and you win the seat. So Mike Thompson, who was our congressman at the time, he won 80,000 votes in the Democratic primary, and that's running unopposed. So anybody who wants to beat him and get into Congress had to basically organize 40,000 votes. And I thought, well, that's really tough, but I've worked on a lot of projects. Unions have done huge projects. All kinds of people have. That's something that could be done. And so that became the goal, to just get that 40,000 votes. And 2 years later, Thompson only got 55,000 votes, which meant that you had to get about 28,000 votes to win the primary and win the seat. And then in 2014, when I ran, I got 14,500 votes, half that number, when I actually had an agent provocateur who was destroying my campaign from within, a campaign manager who sabotaged the website so I couldn't get any contributions and did all this horrible stuff, and I still got 10% of the vote.
Wow.
So it's really about the communities have got to start thinking, we have to take over. We have to run our democracy. It's not about those people who are that group of people who want to be politicians.
Sure.
We have to do it.
Absolutely. I noticed in 2016 that Erin Schroed ran, and she is somebody who was on the Bernie train and did a lot of rallies and stuff, and she got like 9.3 or something % of the vote. And there was a number of people that were running in that primary.
Well, there's one other guy. Yeah, she got, I think, 9.1. Like I said, when they were combined, those two people combined, it was 16.2 or 16.3, and that was more than the Republican got. He got 15.7. Yeah. So that's why my strategy now is to get the 16%. And then after June, we'll have an actual person with Green Party politics, even though he's registered as a Democrat, running against a liberal establishment Dem. And we could really talk about, it really is a chance for Bernie people. If you don't have a Bernie candidate you're supporting locally, if you lend support to my campaign, get the word out, share the videos, get the conversations going, then you're really doing probably more than anything else you could do to support the Bernie vision, because this is the time where the Democrats are deciding, do we go with the Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Hillary Pelosi establishment, you know, you can only do so much paradigm, or are we going to say, yeah, absolutely, we're going for single payer, we're going for $15 minimum wage, we're going to retreat the military, you know, we're going to have free college education, no doubt. And that's what I am. I'm a Bernie-crat, and Huffman was a Hillary superdelegate. So that's the battle here. So I need your help to get from 10 to 16%. That's not so huge. No. And then we'll have this, we'll finally have I mean, I'm totally supportive of Green Party people. Whenever I have events, Green Party candidates and groups are always welcome to table. I'll give them time to talk about why people should register in the Green Party. I'm not an opponent of that. Just in my particular situation, getting the Democratic, being a registered Democrat, I can get the votes I need to actually get elected. And then you'll have someone who's truly talking green politics, who's not just some kind of environmentalist establishment liberal. And I think we need that.
That would be nice. But you're competing against somebody who's raised more than $500,000 this round to put up a whole bunch of ads and talk about how great he is for at least those corporations. That's quite a challenge. And so you must be needing to be out there in the community and boots on the ground. What has your campaign been focused on in terms of reach?
Well, there are two sort of foundations to the campaign. One is the Contract for American Renewal.
Oh, nice. CFAR. Great.
Yes. I'm a CFAR candidate. I think I was the first guy to sign on to that.
Oh, okay.
I work a lot with John Rachel on that. And so I absolutely have committed. I've signed the contract to introduce legislation in the first 6 months for these 11 positions, which include healthcare for all. It includes, there you go, free public education through college, $15 minimum wage, action on climate, obviously, and several others.
Right.
And then I think these are all great, but the list was made based on polls showing major issues that are of tremendous concern that most Americans are already in sync with, and that's great. But for example, I mean, I know it's weird, but I have to be the first to talk about it. This thing with sea level rise and getting our nukes shut down, we really have to be talking about getting off fossil fuels and getting CO2 down as fast as possible.
All right, I want to stop you there because I want to ask you, what is your solution to California? Because Jerry Brown keeps saying over and over again, we're too big, we have to take a long time to transition, so let's just transition slowly in California. How do you do that in California? What would you implement? What kind of legislation would you put forth to make it happen as fast as it needs to happen to survive?
You mean what kind of California legislation?
Yes. Yes. What would, yeah. I mean, what would you write? How would you do it in Cali?
Well, you know, I know Jerry Brown. I've had conversations with him in the past. He's did a lot of work. He had a radio show on KPFA every day. Worked a lot with our Headwaters Forest Group, with Judy Berry especially. So a lot of people feel that he has good instincts.
Right.
But I agree with you 100%. He's starting with this political reality idea, and he's thinking, what can he get accomplished? And so I think his views and what he's working on are simply the limits of what he thinks he can organize to accomplish, and nothing more than that. So I think he's someone who can be reached, even though, there are all kinds of positions, especially dealing with water in the state, that are very upsetting. And, he sold us out on single payer healthcare.
Sure.
But
Nestle.
we don't really have, that's the thing. Most of the groups I've worked with in my life did not deal with electoral politics, except as these outsiders, Green Party candidates and Citizens Party candidates. So there aren't a lot of people who are thinking in terms of, well, how do we really strategically use candidates in a way that changes the framing for the elections? And, the fact that, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to get everyone to talk about climate destabilization as our number one national security threat. And I genuinely think Bernie said that because I had been calling on him to do that. And he just out of the blue said it in the second debate. He hadn't been saying it before. He hadn't been talking about a political revolution before that campaign. And I was calling on him to join the electoral revolution. So I think we really have to invent a new kind of electoral politics. And I think Bernie's movement is the perfect place to start.
Sure.
I'm greener than him, so I'm a little bit more radical, although I don't like using that word. And so I think we can have a cultural conversation that confronts the politicians from the green left, the progressive side, the way the Tea Party people did on the right. And that's what we need to do. We need a cultural movement. And then when you confront Jerry with something, he has to deal with it. I mean, for example, sea level rise, 6 feet of sea level rise is going to take out the Central Valley water supply. 6 feet. So I have to actually talk about a project to build a dam across the Golden Gate Bridge. You know how insane I feel having to talk about that? But this is from a National Geographic program called Earth Underwater, and it costs $2.5 billion. And we're going to lose the water for 26 million people if we don't build that freaking dam. That's why I talk about this, and I think we should call these candidates traitors, because we now are going to have losses like we've never imagined. Look at Puerto Rico. Oh, my God.
Sure.
You think Puerto Rico is going to be recovered next year? No way. And Houston, I plan to go to both those places and to Florida a lot after the June primary to lend support to those people, because this is the future, and it started this year. Okay, the fires that we had in this district were horrible. I'm a victim of the Oakland firestorm in 1991. I lost everything. And then I was homeless for 5 years after that. And I got PTSD. People's lives are being destroyed right now because of the policy decisions made by people in Congress, and the people who were on our side let the other people do it. They
Absolutely.
Never should have let them get away with this "I'm not a scientist" crap. They should have called them out as traitors and said, man, you got to know this stuff or you're not worthy of being in Congress. Because like I said, 132 nations have ocean coastlines. And now what they did by being idiots on the climate issue, they've guaranteed 20 feet of sea level rise. And now you look what's like just today,
Sure.
You and I were talking about this. I went to the Washington Post, brand new article came up like 2 hours ago, 35 degrees above normal at the Arctic right now.
Well,
all over.
That's become normal. So it's okay, Andy.
Yeah, well, yeah, tell that to the people in Florida and Puerto Rico and Houston.
King
about this
tides,
new
normal thing. So you and I agree on the same page. We can talk about climate all day round. I was more after, what kind of concrete fixes will be implemented. And what I was really going was, do you agree that Bernie's words were a climate mobilization? And I actually know where he got those direct words. We interviewed the creators of climate mobilization. Anyway, when he said that, he was implying that what we needed to do was have a D-Day on climate. Basically, an all-in, all industries, all people, like we did in World War II. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, yeah, and actually I had something that's basically the same thing before that. I've been saying that the president, and I was working on Obama, had to declare a national climate emergency.
Yeah.
And that we then
Absolutely.
had to mobilize to rebuild our infrastructure in a way that gets us off fossil fuels in 10 years.
Okay.
And my way of doing that is you retreat the American empire, you end the war on drugs, and I want to go back up to those Eisenhower 90% plus tax rates. And with that money, you take this federal money and you redirect it to the counties and states, and people in the counties and states design how their society will exist with a post-fossil fuel infrastructure, and we fund them to build it. And The heart of that movement, it's called bioregionalism, is right here in Humboldt County. It's where I learned about it. When I was first getting involved in the Green Party movement in 1985, there was a program about these bioregionalists, and they were talking about this area called the Mattole, where like 98% of the forest was logged. And so they were restoring it and trying to restore the rivers to restore the salmon, and they've been very successful. But the concept of bioregionalism, which is part of that movement, was you have to look at an ecosystem and decide how much human impact can that ecosystem tolerate. Like I was saying about tide pools and stuff.
Sure.
How much timber can you take out of Humboldt County without bringing down the ecosystem over 5, 10, 20, 50 years? And it's the same thing with how much salmon can we take out?
Sure.
And so I think the idea is you want to get the whole world's economies designed around the limits of their ecosystems. And so I say the goal is to meet all our food, clothing, shelter needs from as close to home as possible. So what that does, it means that you don't send salads from the Central Valley of California to Toronto. They don't need to do that. They can grow in greenhouses their own salads. And then you suddenly don't have to burn those fossil fuels to ship it that far.
Well, sure, but now you're talking a massive impact on a whole bunch of industries that are going to complain. Loss of jobs, right? They took our jobs because now we're not shipping stuff all over the place. So how do you reconcile that with, I mean, other than saying, look, we're all going to die if we don't do these things, which people don't seem to care about that. If it's got to be jobs or money, right? So how do you reconcile that with your constituents? Marin County probably pretty pissed off about the idea of a 90% business tax, and the rural area is probably upset about the idea of not shipping their stuff places, right?
Well, I'm just using those three things to say that there is money out there. I'm not necessarily saying we should suddenly jump to 90%. The point is, it's not going to be about me coming up with the plan and everyone doing my plan. I'm just starting the conversation.
Sure, absolutely. It's just a question of, do you think the constituents in your district are ready for that? Are they ready for that conversation? Have they been receptive to those ideas?
Well, I would say yes, they're receptive, but has it got them to change how they vote yet?
Right.
Time will tell.
Right.
But the point is, we still have to work on it. See, if I don't win, we still have this situation where sea levels are coming up, and we've got to get those nuclear power plants shut down. And that's 20%. Well, all of our nukes are about 20% of our energy supply.
Sure.
So that means we have to suddenly start talking about, well, how do we, get by with less? With nukes, you lose a lot of the energy in transmission lines.
Of course.
So when you replace nuclear power plants, you don't have to replace them kilowatt hour for kilowatt hour. You just have to replace the amount that actually gets to the end user.
Right. And you're doing that in local distribution.
When you centralize everything.
Right. Absolutely. Decentralization. But that, again, there's a lot of, the energy industry be upset about that because they have kind of a monopoly on that. I want to bring up something I'm seeing in chat here. Metalhead says, whoa, running as a Dem, I don't understand how he's getting funding. They only fund establishment candidates, and we know that. The Dems, I'm sure the DCCC, or maybe I'm wrong, didn't come to you and offer you a chunk of change in exchange for dialing for dollars?
No, and I've been severely limited in all of my races because apparently I'm too advanced for people to think it's a useful organizing project. And as I said, I've always support Earth First projects. I'm always supporting all kinds of projects, whatever I'm doing. So you can think of me as a political actor. For example, I can tell you right now that if this district had voted for me in 2012 or 2014, Trump would not be president. And the reason is I was going out there in all of my campaigns saying that these climate denialists, because they got us to the point where ice sheets are collapsing, that they're traitors. And when they say that they're not scientists and they write the thing off, that they're traitors and they need to go. And all 17 of those Republicans running were climate denialists. And I thought we need to raise hell around the climate issue. And people didn't talk about it at all. But if you do that, then it undermines. It's a whole new thing just right now compared to 2 years ago, because what did happen in Puerto Rico and Houston, you can really talk and the polar vortex, it was warmer in Garberville, which is 200 miles north of San Francisco, than it was in Nome, Alaska this year. It was 27 degrees here, and it was 35 degrees up in northern Greenland. It's just,
absolutely.
The thing is, people haven't thought about it, but we have to bring it into the conversation. We have to be teachers. At the very, very least, I'm entering this material into the cultural conversation, because if we ignore it,
sure.
I can't even, I'm glad I don't have kids, I have a lot of young friends, though, and it just breaks my heart. Some young guy from Florida, like 20 years old, called me up yesterday, and he wants to phone bank for me. And he has all these contacts, and he's just kicking ass to support my campaign because he knows nobody else is talking about this.
That's great.
And
That's good to hear.
The thing about when you work on forest issues, it's very interesting. And also like winter shelters for homeless people, is you experience what it's like to be too late. The first time I helped with a homeless shelter in the winter, we had lost 3 guys, 2 veterans, to the weather. And it's like, wow. I mean, I knew those guys. I helped them out. We had lunch together and they were dead. And that's too late. And same thing with logging. If they're going to go in and cut on Thursday, whatever strategy you use, it better stop the cut by Thursday because they're going to go in and it'll be gone. And it really is that way with climate, but people aren't really thinking about the science for global warming. They're saying we have to deal with it, but they aren't saying, well, we've got to do so much by a certain time or else. And I'm saying, yes, we have to now use this sea level thing to do the thing actually that we've always wanted to do, to go to this decentralized, non-consumerist society that Greens and Citizens Party and all kinds of activists have felt we should do, the people who hate our industrialized consumerist reality. And so I do think that it's not just about thinking about ice sheets collapsing over the next century. It's about all the stuff we really want to do, but we can use this situation to support us in our political platform. So I encourage, people to really look at what I'm presenting. And I have a whole page at my website called Crisis in the Cryosphere. And you can just watch a couple of those radio interviews. And I have the video clip about the Golden Gate Dam Bridge and the water. And just learn that material. That's all you have to do. You don't have to know everything about global warming. I don't follow all the science about what's happening everywhere. But the point is, it's not just some kind of ambiguous thing that we can just do someday. And because someday, 38 years ago, was 38 years ago. Now, 38 years have passed and ice sheets are collapsing.
Right.
Ice sheets are collapsing. These jerks like Inhofe, they've caused our ice sheets to collapse. We need to get those fuckers out of there. We really do.
Absolutely.
Okay?
We only have a few minutes left.
There's no other project that's really taking this on. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, we really have to get all these people.
I absolutely agree, Andy. I'm going to stop you, though, because we've talked almost this entire hour about climate. And I know you're agreeing, masquerading as a Democrat. And I appreciate that. But I do want to ask you some questions about some other things.
Oh, I didn't answer the question about the money, though, except to say that, yes, I don't even approach the establishment Democrats. I do talk with progressive Democratic groups and more activist-oriented people in the Democratic Party.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Well, I hope somebody out there in the, Justice Democrats for your area or Brand New Congress, Our Revolution, is watching and can lend some support to this progressive who's running out there, because obviously you're not taking corporate cash. I just want to ask you a question. We know where all the money can come from to fix most of these things in our government. It's if we slash our budget from the military-industrial complex. Do you agree with that? What would you do with the military budget, and how would you stop our global arms hunger?
Well, you asked about the people in Marin County and their concern about that 90%. I talk about the dumbest, most superstitious 35% of Americans. And that's the Trump voters, the ones who still support him. And a lot of people say, well, what about convincing the Trump voters? We don't need to. We don't need to get that 35% at all. So I think we should really be focusing on trying to tell the truth about issues and about the kinds of solutions that we really need to make. I think everyone deserves housing. And because I see people die because they don't have housing. I think I've gone off from your question.
That's all right. It's all right. We were just talking about. It's all right. You got me. We're talking about military-industrial complex.
Oh yeah. So anyway,
what are you talking about now?
Yeah. Okay. So the point is that I don't think we have to win them over. We have to out them voted. If you get me in, I've pledged to not support any wars. I won't support any new weapons technology. I believe that what we're going to have to do is use the carrot approach. And in fact, because of how Europeans and North Americans have over, a couple of centuries now, put all these fossil fuels up there, we have to put out the money for a lot of these absolutely dirt poor countries to also become sustainable. And so I think what we should do is, with a lot of these military facilities that we have in these other countries is turn them into ecotopian centers. You know, we don't, you know, a lot of the communities in the U.S. are concerned about, well, you can't shut down my base because all this community is built around it. I understand that completely. I live in timber country, you know, and I remember in 2012 at a debate, I asked people, I said, how many of you are former Pacific lumber workers? And raise your hand. And none of them raised their hand. And I said, okay, how many of you are former timber workers? Nobody raised their hand. And there were over 100 people in that audience. And afterward, the mayor came up and he said, yeah, you know, when they shut down the mill, that whole group of people had to move out of the area to get the jobs. And so now this timber community was completely a typical middle American, middle class community, didn't have any of that culture anymore. And so I know how rough that is. But that's why I think we can reorient a lot of these projects. We don't have, I mean, everybody's going to need to get off fossil fuels as much as they can, as fast as they can. They're going to need technological support. They're going to need places to meet. They're going to need places where, you know, I mean, I'm not a communist or socialist, and I don't believe in a top-down, centrally planned government. And in this case, I think you can work with building supply companies in this project. And I think we should be using taxes to subsidize the projects that we need. And I mean, use taxes to stop the things we don't need and subsidies to support the things we do want to make. And that's a real simple project. So with the military, you know, we basically need to be stronger to call out this empire that we've got. I mean, Huffman's never used that word empire or talked about the military industrial complex. And so people act as if it's not running the show. And these right wingers are talking about the deep state. Well, the deep state is the military industrial complex. The people who are funding the Sean Hannitys in the world and all these freaks who are talking about, you know, the Democrats as if they're the deep state, which is ridiculous. I mean, of course, the defense contractors like Feinstein and Pelosi and stuff, they're deep state. But,
so you agree with cutting a big chunk out of the spending military. I love your idea of using the existing NATO bases, because we got, what, more than 100 stuck all over the world, as actually useful places, taking the guns out of soldiers' hands, maybe giving them a shovel and a laptop and having them do something, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, look, I hate those people. I hate George W. Bush. I hate all those militarists, all the people who've just, all these politicians that I fought over for decades who have destroyed the wilderness up here. But I really don't have any time to put into punishing them or anything else. And so I think as much as we can talk about how horrible the empire is, we really have to think about redirecting it. We have to really start putting out there, what society do we want? For example, I would like a new national slogan. They say, oh, it's in God we trust. Well, that started in the 50s as part of the Red Scare. Before that, it was E pluribus unum, out of many one, which is much better, much better.
Yeah,
so
like that
I
one
want
better
it to be,
myself.
we're Americans, we take care of everybody, or we take care of each other.
Absolutely.
And that's got to be the way we think about it. So when you start to think that way, then it's like, of course, everyone should have health care. Of course, everyone should be well fed and have clothes. We want everyone to be able to have good families, you know, that they can look forward to. We don't want to be destroying the world with pollution and with, you know, these horrible weapons, depleted uranium and all the rest of that. So we really have to start talking about what a post-nuclearized, post-fossil fuel, post-nuclear power society looks like. And bioregionalism is a great place to start. You can look up some of this stuff, but you know, there are a lot of people in the Green Party who I think should have been talking about this. And they had a cultural revolutionary project they needed to accomplish. They needed to talk about bioregions. You know, they needed to talk about getting off of fossil fuels. They needed to talk about barter networks, about Mondragon co-ops, you know, all of these alternatives, permaculture, you know, these new ways of being. And what I would like to do is have a department of the world's best ideas, where on any issue, anything that the federal government deals with, we look at how every other country does it. Have you seen Sicko? And what's Michael Moore's newer film about, Dude, I Want to Invade Your Country?
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. I did see Sicko.
Well, they're both great because they go to other countries and they show you how these people deal with it.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do, is put that stuff out there. And I'm going to start my own TV show online where I'll be doing that. And we really have to start showing the way. And that's what a leader is. A leader is someone who helps the team accomplish what the team wants to accomplish.
Right.
I'm a
Absolutely.
team player, you know, and I want to thank everyone who is running for office. And I want to thank everyone who's helping those people. You probably don't get a lot of thanks, but what you're doing is crucial work. And this is the time to be involved. I mean, I did Citizens Party and Green Party stuff before, but now is a more important time to get engaged in electoral politics than ever before. And you got to be proud about being a nonviolent electoral revolutionary, or political revolutionary, if you want to use Bernie's term.
Absolutely.
But, you know, we have to talk about doing something new. And of course, it's a very difficult task for me, for the Marin County voters or where else. In fact, in 2014, I got the highest percentage of votes from the most conservative county. I got 1 in 10 votes in general and 1 in 8 votes in Trinity County.
That's
so,
impressive.
you know, I think a lot of these Republicans, they aren't ideologues, but they, you know, they're these, what do they call it? These single issue voters, like, oh, well, how do you feel about abortion? Okay, well, I'm writing you off, even though the ice sheets are collapsing and there's no economy for my kids when they grow up. But, you know, you're pro-choice. I can't vote for you. And yes, I am pro-choice. 100% pro-choice.
I wouldn't think that'd be too much of an issue out there. Listen, we're out of time. Annie, it's been fantastic having you on. This is great. I really enjoyed your insight and information on the environment. And it sounds like you really, you know, I hope you can get support from the progressive movement out there. We need somebody like you who's not thinking just of resistance, as we were talking in the green room, right? Somebody to push forward. Tell everybody where they can go, website, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're at. We've got a slide here to reference, but where they can go to support you and help you.
Sure. Well, if you just want to stay in touch and learn about my campaign and a lot of these ideas, you go to andycaffrey.org. Pretty simple. And that's also where you can find the link to my Act Blue account. So yeah, I guess that's the sort of only establishment Democratic connection I have, is that Act Blue is taking the online donations for me. If you want to mail a contribution, you can find that information on the contribute page there. So that's andycaffrey.org. That's the main site. But I'm really engaged at Facebook, and you know, you can become a personal Facebook friend of mine, or you can go to Andy Caffrey, or was it Caffrey for Congress Facebook page. And regarding the clearing the coast of nuclear power plants, I've got a Clear the Coast website as well. So you can find out about those single issue projects and Our Revolution. We've got our local Our Revolution page there. So that you can just go to my Andy Caffrey Facebook page and see the links there for those pages.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. It's been great. It's been great talking to you. The hour went really fast, and I didn't realize.
The sunset. Oh my God, I'm so dark now.
I know.
Very,
I know.
Very
I told
dramatic
you.
now.
Told you. But you sound good. It's a good video, and we're gonna go out with the song. You said we're gonna talk about this. You said you met Bruce Coburn, right?
Yeah, he's a big favorite here in Humboldt County, and we have our own little concert hall called the Mateel, and he came through here on his last tour, and I talked with him afterward, and he actually contributed some songs to some benefit CDs we had. And I had a movie. I made a movie about Redwood Summer, and we used his song Where the Death Squad Lives, which is an awesome song. Check it out for sure. But this song, Rocket Launcher, you know, that's the one that got me to pay attention to him. And he's a wonderful guy. He's totally involved in doing activist work. In fact, a really good friend of mine who discovered Headwaters Forest was the co-author of Bruce's autobiography.
Wow.
So Bound for Glory, I think it's called. That's Greg King. So yeah, you know, check in and please share my videos. This is about something new, and we just got to get started. Just got to get started. You can't just think, oh, well, how do you know, win for sure? You know, well, we don't know that we win for sure, but I went from 1% in 2012 to 10% in 2014. I need 16% now. So you can help me with that. If you voted for me, get one more person to vote for me. If you can make your little contribution or share my videos to other Bernie people, I could really use your help to spread my word to other Bernie people around the country. So
awesome.
That's the way to help. Thank you so much. And this is a great show. Thank you for doing it. I think it's a tremendous service, and go for it. All you other candidates out there, go for it. Just don't let them get you down.
There you go. Thank you so much for running, Andy. It is the most difficult thing to do, as we have learned, and I appreciate that. Laura Livengood, thank you for all that you do. Comment Monty. And,
Quite welcome.
Who's next? We got somebody coming up, right?
Nils Paulson, running for Congressional District 5, which is nearby you, the Sonoma-Napa area. He's running as an independent. He will be on Wednesday. And then next week, we have Eric Rydberg, who's running for Secretary of State in the Green Party, and Brian Kim, and I can't remember Brian. I think he is District 53, is Brian Kim next
Well,
Wednesday.
good luck to them. I hope he defeats Thompson in the 5th District. And go for it, Eric. He's a local guy up here, too. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Please share and donate. Like. We are user supported. That means you. Oh, I got to tell you about this video. This video. So Marcus found this. So this is not Bruce Coburn's version. This is a cover. Marcus found this, and this is this is kind of chilling. And I wanted to play it, but I want to read what the guy who posted it had to say about it. This was posted in 2011. It says Carl Reed. The guy's name is Carl Reed. He actually died from a brain tumor. But it says, here's the late Carl Reed from New Zealand, who I recorded in 1998 performing his wonderful version of Bruce Coburn's song, If I Had a Rocket Launcher. Back in about 2008, I was informed by a relative of Carl that he had passed away a few years before from brain tumor. I'd only met Carl once and recorded about 50 minutes of his wonderful original and cover songs, but I remember him as being a very charming, rather dashing and sweet chap, so here's this video. I think this version it just gives me chills. And I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about who Bruce Coburn was until Marcus found this and we'd played an earlier version of it. That's how I had no idea, which is I'm embarrassed for that. But anyway, great version. Really thank Annie for being on the show, and really thank you if you could share our video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we are being censored heavily by YouTube. We are having our subscribers unsubscribed just automatically, and we have seen our views and all other statistics drop dramatically. Independent media is under attack. It's under attack by every other corporate interest on the web, and it's under attack by mainstream media, and it's up to us in the progressive movement to fight back. And the best way you can do that is to share the content, because that helps amplify the message. So thank you all for being here. Here is Carl Reed, If I Had a Rocket Launcher cover.
This one's called Rocket Launcher by Bruce Coburn. Learned this when I was in Australia off a guy called Davey Love. Here comes a helicopter, for a second time today. Everybody scatters, hopes it goes away. How many kids they murdered, only God can say. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, I'd make somebody pay. I don't believe in bodyguards, and I don't believe in hate, and I don't believe in generals or their stinking torture states. When I talk with the survivors of things too sickening to relate, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, I would not hesitate. On the Rio Centen, 100,000 wait to fall down from starvation, some less humane fate. Cry for Guatemala, with a corpse in every cascade. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, I would retaliate. Gonna raise every voice but at least I've got to try. Every time I think about it, water rises to my eyes. The situation's desperate, echoes of the victim's cry. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, some son of a bitch would die. Some son of a bitch would die. Some son of a bitch would die.